ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Fight for Our Freedom Radio. And I'm your host, Badbaby. And tonight we are honored to have Roberta Grimes with us. She is a business attorney, a mother of 3, a grandmother of 5. She has written 2 books, The Fun of Dying and The Fun of Staying in Touch. And we're going to get her ideas of what's going on in the afterlife. Welcome to the show, Roberta. It's an honor to have you with us tonight.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. We're going to have fun.
Oh, yes, I know we are. I can't wait to get started. Why don't you explain to us exactly, Roberta, what happened to you when you were 8 years old and what it piqued your interest in all this?
Well, when I was a good little Christian child, and then it was April 9th, 1955, I woke up in the middle of the night, and I knew there was no God, and I was terrified. In the middle of the room, there was a bright flash of white light, and a voice said, "You wouldn't know what it is to have me if you didn't know what it is to be without me. I will never leave you again." So when you're 8, of course, everything is surprising, so nothing is. I thought, it's handy that if you forget there's a God, they remind you, and I went back to sleep. But it's in the nature of these experiences that they stay fresh in your mind. I mean, it's been more than 60 years. I still feel as if that just happened last night. And I never asked a question, so I never got an answer, but I spent my whole childhood waiting to find out what this normal thing was that had happened to me. And finally, I was so frustrated, I even majored in early Christian history in college, just so I figured then for sure they'll tell you what happens if you forget there's a God. But of course, never asked a question, never got an answer. And I finally realized that the only way I was ever going to find out would be if I figured it out myself, and that's when I started researching the afterlife. I figured what had happened to me must have come from where the dead are, and actually that turned out to be right.
You say that you studied Christianity. Could you elaborate on that for us a little bit? Exactly how far did you go into studying, and what was your life as a Christian?
Well, I was very, very Christian as a child. I was Protestant. I started reading the Bible at 18. I've read it probably, I figure, 8 or 9 times, because I read it every night, a couple of pages, from the age of about 18 to the age of, I was in my early 50s. So let's say I read the Bible a lot. And what I majored in college, quite specifically, I majored in religion, but my concentration was in the first few hundred years of Christian history, when, of course, a lot of things happened. And that included a lot of Bible study, and it included study of the councils where they assembled the Bible. And I came away. Let's just say, if you like sausage, don't go to a sausage factory. If you want to believe the Bible is the inspired Word of God, don't watch them put it together. It was a little bit disillusioning, but I was still very Christian. I married a Catholic, and at that point became a Catholic, and was a very big deal Catholic. I was a lector. I taught Sunday school. I've been a very, very sincere Christian my whole life, until I suddenly realized I couldn't be any longer because it wasn't true.
Well, do you feel that there are parts in the Bible that try to fit us into a mold to keep our spirituality from evolving?
Well, of course. This is what is true. Most of the Bible is not from God. And we know that's true because anybody who does what I've done and actually sits down and reads it cover to cover knows it could not possibly be all from one source. If God is consistent, rational, all-powerful, it's not all from God. You know it if you read it. But there is a part that is, because I was doing all that afterlife research and putting together a detailed picture that, it's very easy to figure out what's going on because all the evidence is perfectly consistent. You just have to put the time in. And then I discovered in my early 50s that Jesus, in the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, told us things about God, reality, death, the afterlife, and the meaning and purpose of our lives that we could not have learned in any other way until the early probably early 21st century, just about a few years ago, late 20th perhaps, when we finally put all the afterlife evidence together. No other way could we have corroborated that Jesus did know what he was talking about. That part is definitely the inspired word of God. There's no question about that. We can prove that now. But it's just Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John.
Going to church and you were teaching the children, you said you were, I think I heard you say on one of your interviews that you were teaching the children and that. So you were really, really involved in the church.
Oh, sure. I believed sincerely. I had to squelch some doubts because, believe me, when there are parts of the Bible you cannot read without having your stomach lurch if you want it to be true. But I tried very hard to believe it and to live it and to teach it until I had to admit when I was in my early 50s that not a single thing I had been teaching was true. None of it was true. The only part that's true is Jesus. Jesus is real, and Jesus came as our teacher, as he said. But the rest of it, there's no evidence, and we've looked hard for it. I'm not the only one. I mean, a lot of people have been trying to find some evidence that God ever has judged anyone, and there's no evidence of that. No evidence that the death of Jesus has made an afterlife difference for a single human being ever. There's no evidence for a fiery hell. There's no evidence for a powerful Satan. There's no evidence for any of it. None of it.
Then what do you say to someone who says that they died, had a near-death experience, and they experienced hell? Why would they come back and say they experienced hell?
What we know from the dead, and I consider them to be the real experts, is that a near-death experience is not related to death. A near-death experience is it's a very important event, but it's a different event. And the experiences people have basically it's astral traveling. It's traveling in the parts of the astral which are not where the dead are. Now, I'm not sure about this, but the dead tell us that it's not possible for anyone who is alive and is going to come back as alive to ever go to where they are. Instead, they go to what amount to mimics that are in the astral. And one of the evidences of that is that many near-death experiences include someone saying to the person experiencing it, if you go any farther, you will not be able to go back. Basically, they're getting too close to where the dead actually are. But in point of fact, in nearly all near-death experiences, a lot of the experiences are pulled out of the person's own mind, which is why you get a lot of religious imagery in near-death experiences. You do have people who think they're in hell until they start calling for help, and they're instantly out of it. But these are illusions created from what's in their minds. The actual death process is quite different from near-death experiences. It's very consistent, very, very, across generations. For the last 200 years, the actual death experience has been very, very similar in all deaths, completed deaths. For one thing, there's no tunnel with a light. That seems to be a rescue device, a wormhole to get people through the lowest astral levels, which are very unpleasant, and into the upper levels. The actual death process involves deathbed visitors. It involves, a process of leaving the body, raising the vibration, and we are exactly in the same place where the dead are. It's very much as if your mind is a TV set, and right now it's tuned to that body on this level, which we think is the lowest level of reality. When you die, all that happens is that your mind tunes to a slightly higher channel, picks up a whole new solid reality, and there you are. But there's no religious imagery involved in any genuine death. There's no judgment. There's never a physical God. God is never physical. We're told that by the dead, and I've never seen any report from the actual dead of seeing a God. It's just a very different experience than what a near-death experience is.
Why, Roberta, do you think it is that everybody thinks what they're taught is the right way and everyone else is wrong? Like, Islamic thinks, Muslims think they're right, Jewish think they're right, Christians think they're right, Protestants. Why do we have so much hate in religion? Well,
that's a very, very good question, and there's a really good answer for it. what we come to understand from the dead is that the only thing that exists is an energy-like potentiality, which essentially is what we experience as consciousness. It's very powerful, and it has a range of vibratory rates from the highest, which is what we experience as love, to the lowest, which is what we experience as fear. Every religion that I have ever studied uses fear. They're all fear-based. Usually what they teach is fear of God, fear of hell, fear of anything negative like that. Now, when something is based in fear, all the fear-based emotions are going to be part of it, like hatred and anger and spite, and every negative thing is going to be part of that. So religions, all of them that I've ever studied, are very low vibration. We are here to learn how to raise our vibration. That's why the universe exists. It's our school for raising our spiritual vibration. And you can't do that if you're mired in negative beliefs, which is which Christianity certainly is that, but I think they all are.
I really feel it's a form of mind control.
It is. That's exactly right. What they do is they instill in you a great fear of God usually, but they also say, but look, I have an antidote. You've got this fear now, but I have this antidote that will take away the fear and make you okay, but you've got to keep warming the pews and filling the coffers, and then you'll be fine. That's what religions are, but especially that's what Christianity is. And it breaks my heart to say it because nobody's been a more devout Christian than I. I mean, it breaks my heart to realize that I was in the same position. I also feared God. God is not to be feared. God is infinite love. And if you fear God, you cannot love God. You cannot follow the most basic commandment that Jesus ever gave us, which is you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind. You can't do it if you're afraid.
Well, I know your other book is Staying in Touch is Fun. And I do have communication with my deceased husband, and I just came under attack from a bunch of ladies that are Christians that they feel, and I want your take on this, they feel because I have communicated with my husband, which he has done nothing but protect me. I have been under attack and attacked by people, gang stalkers and that, and there have been times where my life has come in danger, and he has forewarned me and protected me.
Isn't that wonderful?
I've had nothing but positive communication with him. And I am under attack from these women saying that, and I want your take on this, saying that he's a demon and that I'm being possessed and that I'm going to burn in hell if I don't repent, say the sinner's prayer, which I was just like you. I was raised a little Catholic girl. I've read the Bible. I've been in all different churches. In fact, I taught Sunday school to some of the children, so I know the Bible well, too. And then they started accusing me of I don't know my Bible, and, and I felt, and I asked them to, keep their own views. I wanted to keep mine, and I just had this overwhelming feel of somebody trying to trap me in a box with my spirituality, and I didn't want to go back there.
No. Well, they're wrong. I mean, they cannot possibly be genuine followers of Jesus and talk like that. It's not possible because everything they've just said is anathema to what the Master would ever say. They're not speaking from love. They're speaking from fear and hatred. I mean, it says right in John, in 1 John, it says, try the spirits to see if they are of God. Everyone I know who is communicating with the dead does exactly that. They cloak themselves in the genuine spirit of God before they even begin. This is a holy process. We would not be allowed to talk with the dead if this were not of God. I mean, what they want to do is stay in their ignorance. And they can do what they like with their own ignorance, but they don't have the right to inflict it on others. I mean,
that's what I asked. I said, respectfully, respect my path. This is my path. You do not have the right to tell me how to walk my path. You can believe what you want to believe, and I can believe what I want to, but you have no right to judge me or hate me over it. And I don't hold any hard feelings against them because I feel that they have not evolved above what they're being, controlled with. And again, we're going to go back to the fear. Because immediately I don't want my friend to go to hell. Well, I don't think I'm going to go to hell. I think I'm a good person.
There is no fiery hell. There is what Jesus talked about, which is an outer darkness where there will be wailing and gnashing of teeth. That's exactly what exists. And what puts you there is if your spiritual vibration is so low that you cannot go higher. And these people that you're talking about sound like Class A candidates for ending up in the outer darkness. That's who they are. They do not possess mirrors, or you could not hold a Bible in one hand and a mirror in the other and not feel real squeamish if you were one of those people, because what they're doing has nothing to do with Jesus, nothing. Jesus is nothing but love and kindness. Jesus, for heaven's sake, Jesus had dinner with tax collectors. He pardoned everybody. He loved everyone. These people are hate-filled. How could they be so disgusting?
Well, and the thing is, the Bible, and like you said, Jesus, he hung out with people, the sinners, the prostitutes.
Yes, he did.
And he tried to show them a better way. And these people have just cut completely ties from me like I'm just the evilest thing that walked the earth.
You don't want ties with them. One of the things that we learn to do as we are progressing spiritually is we learn to gently and with love and blessing separate ourselves from people who are that wrong, that misguided, and that clueless, because you can't fix them. You basically are sullying yourself spiritually if you associate with people like that. You can't do it. But send them love. I mean, don't blame them.
I don't blame them.
Sad.
I feel bad because they won't open their mind up enough to see the whole picture. And, and I look at it this way. I feel like I have evolved to the point where I know, as long as I'm walking a good path and showing love and kindness to everybody and trying to do whatever it is that I've come here to do, because I always feel like we're here for some reason, and I know I can't leave yet because I know I still have something to do.
Yes.
I always have this feeling like I know there's something I have to do. I just want to walk my path and shine my light. That's all I want to do.
Yeah. No, and I'm sorry that you're being attacked by people who are that foolish. It's unfortunate. There are a couple of big problems with Christianity, and my hope is that as Jesus speaks more clearly to us, these people never read the Gospels. They could not read the Gospels and actually believe the things they believe. But Jesus is speaking much more clearly to the world now through many people. And as he speaks more clearly, my hope is that they'll come to understand two big problems and solve them. The first is that Christianity is based in fear of God. That has to stop. Because while people are fearing God, they cannot love God, and they are breaking God's greatest commandment when they fear God. We've got to get rid of that. The second thing they're doing is that they are believing a horrendous lie. This whole notion that Jesus came just to be a sacrifice to God, does anyone ever think about what an insult that is to God? Ask yourself which of your children you would most like to watch being horribly murdered so you could forgive the others for messing up the living room. That's what we believe about God? That's terrible. It's not true. We know now it's not true because we have independent corroboration of the fact that it's not true. But what it has done is, from the beginning, it has made Christians trivialize the greatest gift humankind has ever gotten, which is the gospel teachings of Jesus. Nobody follows them. No Christian does. And yet it turns out that the gospel teachings of Jesus are the greatest set of instructions for how to rapidly grow spiritually that we have ever been given. They work beautifully. My next book is called The Fun of Growing Forever, and it's about how you can really easily ace this lifetime and get right to the top of the afterlife, and you do it by following the teachings. And Jesus said that himself. He said, if you hold to my teachings, you are really my disciples. Then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. That's exactly right. That's right. I mean, the
Explain
Christians have the answers, but they just don't use
what
them.
happens when we die and the process of where we go.
Well, and it is a process. But we plan our lives here. With the people who will be important in our lives and with our spirit guides, we plan this lifetime, and we're planning it to get as much growth out of it as possible. It's hard to grow spiritually in the afterlife levels, or really where we live forever because our minds are eternal. It's hard to grow there. It's like a spiritual couch. It's too easy. Life is easy. So we have to come to the spiritual gym, and we plan all the bad things that happen in your life, deaths and loss of a job and illnesses and all those awful things. We plan those with joy because they are opportunities for us to grow. And since nobody really dies, if you lose a child, the child is fine. But it helps you to grow spiritually to have these things happen. So we plan out our lives, we come into our lives, and we are doing it's unfortunate because we are let down so badly by Christianity. Jesus says right in the Gospels, this is why we're here, but we ignore that too. But hopefully we begin to stretch ourselves spiritually, to learn to love, to learn to grow, and then we might come to an exit point. Usually there are 2 or 3 that are planned into a given lifetime. When we think our heart consciousness, which is most of our consciousness, which stays behind, is watching, and it's thinking, maybe it's time to come home because we can't make much more out of this lifetime. A few things we thought would happen aren't going to. We're going to come home now. So we get cancer, or we have an accident, or something happens and we're about to die. Or maybe it's old age. You could be 90 and that's your last exit point. But when there's a natural exit point approaching, that's not fun. I mean, my book is called The Fun of Dying because that's what the dead call dying, but they're talking about the period not leading up to it, but when the death actually starts. 2 or 3 days, up to about a few hours before we are actually going to leave our body, we start to see people that we used to think were dead. They look young, they look healthy, they look happy. It could be 1, it could be 20, it could be your dog. For me, it's going to be my horse. I've already arranged for that. They come to the bedside, and they're solid, they look wonderful. Usually only we can see them. But there are reported cases of people who also can see what the dead are seeing.
I saw. Right the day before my husband died, we had 2 couches in the living room, and I was doing the dishes, and I turned around and looked at a couch, and I saw a man sitting on a couch, and I turned around and looked back, and he was gone, and I knew who he was. He was my husband's uncle who had died previous years earlier.
That's great. You did see someone. Raymond Moody, who also wrote, he was the one who coined near-death experiences. He also coined the term shared deathbed visions in his book Glimpses of Eternity, which came out in 2010. A wonderful man. He's just a wonderful scholar. But whether we can see them or not, what usually happens is that the dead will stop communicating with us, and they'll be looking usually at a corner of the room, and they look as if they're just, gazing at the corner of the room. They're really talking to their loved ones in their minds. Then what happens?
About 10 hours before my husband passed, and I had been up with him all weekend. He died of esophageal cancer. He got up just before he became unconscious, and he didn't realize he had oxygen on, and he tried to walk away, and the oxygen cord pulled him back, and he fell on the coffee table. It woke me up. I was on the other couch. And I asked him, I said, what are you doing? You got oxygen. He looked, and he looked confused, and then he looked at me, and he said, this is it. I'm dying. I'm going to die in a few hours. He said, and he goes, I know. They told me. And then he fell on me. I said, I know you're dying. There's nothing I can do. And then he fell on top of me, and I got out from under him and got him back up on the couch and called the hospice nurse over here. And then he could talk to me for about an hour or so, and then he became incoherent. His eyes rolled back, but he knew what was going on because I was putting cold rags on his forehead, and I got up to go in the bathroom to rinse the rag, and the hospice nurse yelled, what are you doing? And then she said, you come back and sit next to him. He doesn't want you to leave his side, and I'll rinse the rags for you. So then I didn't leave his side after that. But he didn't talk to me, but he knew I was leaving his side.
They generally stop talking to us when they're in close communication with their deathbed visitors. But this interesting phenomenon of suddenly he's got energy, this usually happens 24 to 12, that range of hours before the actual death. And doctors actually predict it to be a sign of that the death is imminent. It's not a sign they're getting better. It's a sign that the death is coming. So that's what happened to him too. But anyway, what happens is we are built as like a set of energy figures, nested dolls like Russian dolls. And what's staying behind is, of course, what we think of as physical, but of course it's made out of energy too. And probably also the aura, which is, we can't usually see it, but it's a protective shell that is even larger than the physical body. But the interior part of us is going away. It is energy. It travels easily out of the body. Most nights we travel astrally. We don't remember it, but we go take classes, talk to our loved ones, talk to our guides, do some R&R when our bodies are sleeping. But now it's going to leave forever. And people who have been awake during this process say that it feels funny, but it doesn't really hurt. They can feel the energy leaving their extremities. It's sort of unsticking. They say it almost feels like threads breaking and gathering in their chest area. And then it leaves either through the top of the head or sometimes through the chest. And sometimes people see the actual spirit leaving. It looks like a mist. And then it seems to disappear. But what happens is its vibratory rate is rising fairly quickly, and it gets above what we in our bodies are able to see. It reforms into a person, solid, and there you are, and you're hugging your mom that you haven't seen in 30 years, and it's a joyous, joyous time. We've had this cord that has attached us to our body for our entire lives. The Bible calls it a silver cord, and people who've seen it say it does look sort of silverish. It's an energy cord. That has been so tough, you could go beyond Pluto. It didn't matter how far you went, you could go anywhere, and it's kept you attached to that body. But now it's going to fray and break. And when it does, that's when the body that we're leaving behind dies.
Does it hurt?
No, none of this hurts. In fact, the dead tell us it's actually, some of them have said it's intensely pleasurable. It almost is orgasmic to leave a body. But think about why. I mean, you've been imprisoned in this boat anchor, this dying body, and suddenly you're free, and you can float in the air, and you're light and healthy and happy, and you see these people around you who look fine, so you know you're going to be fine too. It's a great experience to be first out of your body. But the problem is you don't really understand what's going on, and you don't know that there is a risk because your energy vibratory rate is rising fairly rapidly. But people around your bed might be upset, and if you try to comfort them, you're going to lower your vibratory rate, and you may make it so you're not any longer in contact with the visitors who come for you, and that means you could get stuck. That's one of the ways we make ghosts. I think it may be the main way that people become ghosts. They get distracted at the wrong time.
I hear a lot of ghosts stick around because they're afraid they're going to go to hell, so they won't cross.
That's another thing that can happen. People who are fearful of what's going to happen after death might choose to stay behind. Some people stay behind because they're of extremely low vibration and they can't even make it that high. One of the reasons I'm so opposed to executing people is that what you're doing is you're taking someone who's already low vibration, and at the height of fear and anger, you're freeing him from his body. I mean, that's just, you're creating a demon, and that's bad for him, and that's bad for the people he might harm. So
let's talk about bad people for a minute. Like, for instance, let's talk about the people that are beheading people in ISIS. What happens to these people? I mean, they got to be low vibration people.
Yes. But it's really how you see things. If it's you, I mean, they think what they're doing is holy, is for their God, and therefore they themselves don't feel evil. We don't. It's probably very variable what happens to them at death or after death, but there is no judgment in the afterlife by anyone but ourselves. None. So angels will come for them. I mean, loving beings will come for them, since they are part of the mind of God, just as we are. So they're not evil. What they are is very, very deluded and very confused. And a great effort is made once they get there, whoever these people are who have been doing bad things, a great effort is made to educate them and help them understand what they've done wrong, and help them then to, once they understand it, help them to forgive themselves for what they've done wrong. Very often, for example, the people who were killed in the Holocaust have been apparently ever since then trying to rescue many of the guards from the lowest level of the afterlife, what Jesus called the outer darkness. Because, of course, the guards were mortified when they died and realized what they'd done and how diluted and awful it was. And so they're punishing themselves, and the people that they tormented have forgiven them and are trying to rescue them. That's how things are there. They just do not see the way we see any of this.
Well, I get attacked a lot when I talk about that we actually plan our life, because a lot of people that listen to my shows are tortured and targeted and have nothing but a life of hell, and they get angry at me because they say, there ain't no way I signed up for this, and I don't think you'd sign up for it too. And I thought, well, I don't think right now I would either, knowing what I go through. But I don't know what I agreed to when I was on the other side. And I can't say that it's gospel, but, I'm just telling them what I have researched and what I have found. Now, PMH Addie Water was on my show, and she gave an interesting story about a man that she had interviewed in Chicago that was in the mafia, that he was the hitman, and that he had died and had such a horrible experience that he changed his whole life, that when he came back, that he got out of the mafia and he works helping the homeless and making food at the soup kitchen, and he's trying to make amends for all the evil he did, because he had to experience the pain that he inflicted on the person that he killed and also all of their relatives.
Now, you understand that he was going through a near-death experience, and what he was being given by his spirit guides was experiences that would help him turn his life around, and it worked, and that's wonderful. And but I would just tell the people who said they wouldn't have signed up for this, I would just say, hocus pocus, change the focus. Start understanding what's really going on. And what's really going on is you are probably a more advanced being, and you gave yourself the tremendous gift of having been born with whatever these issues are that you think are a problem. They're gifts, because when you ace them, when you use them as they're meant to be used so that you can powerfully grow spiritually, you're going to shoot right to the top of the 5th level, and you're going to have the most joy you can possibly imagine forever. You go to the gym not expecting it to be fun. It's not supposed to be fun. It's going to hurt to use those machines. But if you don't use them, you never get anywhere. You're going to be a blob. So
I listened to one of your interviews, and you said that actually our version of heaven, or wherever we want to go, is basically what we create in our mind, in our thought process, and whatever kind of house we want to live in, or what we imagine our pleasantries would be. And I had to laugh because I want to live in a house that's inside of a big tree, and I want smooth blacktop roads to ride my Harley.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because there are some really fanciful houses there. Because, yes, if we are at least at a decent level of spiritual development, the period right after death is like R&R, like you cannot believe. People live in houses. They live with whoever they like. They do whatever they want to do. There are all kinds of weird vehicles. They're all mind propelled, so there's no exhaust or anything. But if you want to fly, have a helicopter, have an airplane, have a boat, weird cars, all kinds of things. You can do it's playtime, and you play. And
yeah.
If you want to learn to play an instrument, I'm going to ride my horse. It's just going to be the most fun you can imagine. But
I have had an outer body experience, and I don't know what was going on that night, but I felt like I was flying, and I hit the wall at the end of my hallway, and I saw a dark figure, and I heard a man say, "Forget this," and he went out through the wall. And I was like, what the heck's going on? And I looked down the hallway, and I saw the silver cord, and I saw myself laying in the bed, and that's when I went, oh, my God, I'm out of my body. And I went, shoo, like I was yanked back, and when I hit my body, the bed shook. Like I just, like someone threw me on the bed. And I woke up, and I was so startled by that, I didn't want to go back to sleep because I didn't want something to happen to me again. So I turned the TV on, and the tsunami had just hit in Japan. Do you see any connection there?
Wow, isn't that amazing? Yeah, I mean, but that's what it's like. People will be spontaneously out of body. It happens to most of us every night, and we generally don't leave the environs of our bed, but we just, the body needs its sleep. We need to talk to our guides or our loved ones or whoever, and we do that. But you can learn to be awake during such an experience, and you can learn to control such an out-of-body experience. There are fascinating books people have written who have become expert at it. And once in a while, as happened to you, you come to awareness when you're not in your body, and it freaks you out, right? I mean, it's not...
Yeah, it freaks me out, all right. But I knew that I wasn't dead because I could see the silver cord, and, it was kind of waving.
Yes, yeah, there have been various descriptions of it. Some people, by the way, who are out of their bodies don't actually see the silver cord. So if you find yourself out of your body, you don't see it, that doesn't mean you're dead. It just means you're not seeing the cord. But it's common. It's common for people to see it.
Well, the thing is, and I'm going to ask you about the pineal gland, because I feel that the fact that they're poisoning us with the GMOs and the chemtrails and the fluoride, and I know the fluoride calcifies your pineal gland, and also the prescription medicines. So I have not seen a doctor in probably about 10 years. I haven't taken any prescription medicines. I live on a farm. I don't drink fluoridated water. I have well water. And I also purify that water to a pH level of 9.5. So I feel that possibly, and I also do meditation with the sun to decalcify my pineal gland. I feel that possibly my spiritual connection is more open because I'm more in tune, because I'm not poisoning my pineal gland.
I don't really know much about, the only thing I know about your pineal gland is that the spiritual mimic, the part of your body that corresponds to it is the place where you can produce spiritual light. And I didn't believe this at all, except it works. I've used it to help people. I've produced spiritual light and helped people who were in distress simply by surrounding them with it. So I don't know how it works. But here's the thing we've got to focus on. We have a dangerously low spiritual vibratory rate all over this planet. That's why everything is such a mess. That's the core problem. For most of the 20th century, and continuing now even more intensely, those at the highest levels of what we think of as the afterlife have been working to raise the spiritual vibration of this entire planet. They call it raising the consciousness of the planet. But what it amounts to is shifting it to a higher vibration where love is the focus and away from the fear and hatred aspect, which is the lowest vibration. That's starting to happen. And many, many of us, including you, I'm sure, are working on it. We all have our little roles to play. But once even 10 or 15% of us have done this, it's going to raise everyone's vibration because we are all part of one mind, right? And therefore, if enough people are raising their vibration and emphasizing love in their lives and only love, it'll be impossible for anyone from the evil people poisoning people's pineal glands to ISIS. They will no longer be able to live in evil because evil just won't exist. Everything will lighten. Can you see why? Because we're only one mind. And they can't continue to be as low vibration as they are when enough of us are high vibration. It's really that simple. And that's why the teachings of Jesus are so important, because they're the easiest way for us to pretty quickly raise our spiritual vibration by a lot. I mean, I just started living the teachings of Jesus 5 years ago. No Christian does, by the way. They just don't take them seriously. But it has changed me so much. I'm actually likable now, if you can believe that. You wouldn't have liked me before. And
I was like that too. I mean, I had a lot of trauma throughout my life. I was abused as a child, and I became pregnant at the age of 15 and married to my first husband of 11 years that did nothing but beat me and cheat on me. And, and then I remarried, and I had a good marriage with my husband, but his parents were very narcissistic and very abusive to me. So I took all their abuse, and then after he died, I became a targeted individual, and I'm abused now. And I had a lot of anger from, I just felt like I'm tired of being abused, and I had a lot of anger. I wanted to fight everybody all the time, because I was so abused. And somehow I evolved to let go of all that, and I just try to project love. And if you ever look at my Facebook page, it has nothing on it but love and light. And I started out with like 2 or 3 people that I knew, and when I started posting that I loved everybody, I have 3,600 friends now, and they all came to me and said that they're attracted to my page and that they just feel the love that radiates through my page. And I have so changed, and there is such a connection of love. And even when I go out in public, I'll put jasmine oil on, patchouli oil, or any kind of a high vibration oil, and people will just be so friendly with me in the store. They just attract me. So am I vibrating higher than them?
I have no idea. that I don't know. I mean, obviously, you seem to me to be a nice person. It's hard to overcome our past. The primary problem that most of us have, and you may well have mastered this, that may be why it's working so well for you. The primary problem that we have is with forgiveness. Forgiveness is the core skill, and it's very difficult to learn to forgive at a rate sufficient to really get rid of all this garbage. That's the primary thing. That forgiveness and love are the 2 things that Jesus taught. Forgiveness comes first. We have to forgive first, and forgive everything, including our past, including God, including everything. And then we're able to love in the way that Jesus taught us to love. But it's not hard. It's really easy, and his teachings make it so much easier.
Well, I just had a target come visit me not long ago, and her mother abused her, and then her mother somehow, I don't know the details, but she cut her out of the, or stole some estate money from her, I guess $200,000, and all she talked about while she was here was how she hated her mother, she wanted her mother to die, and why doesn't the Lord answer her prayers? And I told her, I said, you can't expect God to bless you when you're holding on such hate. And she slammed her fist on my table and said, I'll tell you when I'll be happy, when there's a bullet in her head. And I said, you're never going to feel peace in your heart if you don't let go of the hate you're holding for this person and forgive.
Well, that's unfortunate. I feel bad for but people like that are victims of the fact that we have allowed, and it's because we have free will. We have to be able to choose low vibration emotions in order for it to be valuable for us to choose high vibration emotions. It's required for spiritual growth to happen that we have free will. And too many people have for too long exercised their free will to choose appalling things. And this is where we are now. That someone like her, I mean, what a poor, tragic way for her to feel. But she's a victim of the fact that the ambient energy in our society and, in fact, all over the world is so low. I mean, here's something disgusting. What we're learning, and this is an area where I'm not expert at all, but we are so bad off that our planet is in what amounts to universal intensive care. there are very high vibration beings who are protecting our planet now because there are low vibration interdimensional beings that would like to milk us for evil because we produce so much of it. I mean, isn't that disgusting? What are we doing to ourselves
I do
in our
think
world?
that we have a lot of low vibration and evil on this planet. Let me get your take on the devil then. Where does the devil come in on all this?
There's no devil. I mean, here's the thing. I mean, when you understand that the higher the vibration of consciousness has, the more powerful it is, which is why God is so infinitely powerful, because God is at the highest level of vibration. The lower the vibration, the less powerful it is. In fact, the most evil beings, not in bodies of which we're aware, are what they call shadow men, and they can't even appear. Their only hope is to scare people, and so they will pick on a victim and then hide in the closet and try to scare children. And there are some people who are plagued by them through life. But all you have to do is have a nightlight on, and they have nothing. That little nightlight is enough.
What about all the people that are practicing Satanism and child sacrifice?
The people who are doing things like that are attracting really nasty entities, which can mess with their minds, which can make them want to do evil things. But those entities themselves are not evil, and nearly all of them, it appears, were once people. Remember I said we shouldn't be executing people because we're creating more demons? Mm-hmm. One of the things those demons do is to latch on to people who are trying to practice Satanism. The fact that there is no Satan, there's no powerful being in opposition to God, and there can't be, that doesn't mean there aren't a lot of nasties. And those nasties, as I say, many of them were once people. But they don't have power. The power lies in love. The power lies in fact, I know of a situation where they're fighting some very low-level entities in the level just above ours, above the material one, because they're in the process of establishing what amounts to telephonic communication with the afterlife. Those doing this work, of course, are dead scientists. And the weapon they're using against these low vibration nasties that are trying to prevent us from communicating is love. What they've done is they've called in angels, and they're filling the area where these things are with love, and it's like acid on snow. They're making them disappear.
Well, I have had a few, I'm not going to mention names, relatives that have passed that when I was back into the old thinking that they were going to go to hell and burn. When I was at their funerals, I would just pray on and on and on, and Lord, I love that person. Even though they did mean things to me, I still love them, and I don't want to see them burn in hell or be in a terrible place. Please show mercy on them, And if I was to cross over and be at a higher level and they aren't there, would it be possible for me to try to help them?
Yes, of course. The way it works is this: people who are dead, who tell us what it's like there, say that it's easy for them to go lower, but that they can't go higher than the vibratory level to which their own level of development suits them. So let's say that they can maybe get to the lowest part of level 4. There are 3 sort of prime levels, which are very Earth-like, 3, 4, and 5, and maybe they can be in level 3 or 4. They can't get to level 5. They say if they try to go higher, it's like the vibration is such that they can't stand it. It's like sound and energy and everything all at them. They just can't do it. But they can easily go to a loved one who's, let's say, is in the outer darkness level and try to get that person's attention and try to help them. Easy. They also can get down to our level very easily, which is why your loved ones may well be in the room with you right now and perhaps trying to give you a sign or two and get your attention.
It's funny that you said that, because I dedicated my opening bumper song to my deceased husband, which the anniversary of his death was yesterday, and he let me know right after that song ended that he was here. He does something, but he's done so many things. Like the first anniversary, we got married on his birthday, and he always gave me roses. And I have an old jukebox here, a Bubbler's jukebox, And I was sitting up at about 3 o'clock in the morning, and I was crying because he wasn't here. It was our anniversary, and it was the first anniversary I wasn't going to have with him. And I just said, you're never going to give me roses again. I'll never get roses from you again. And my jukebox kicked on, spun around, and there's over 1,000 songs in there. And I didn't even know this song was in there. It was on one of my old country discs. It kicked on, and it put a song on, and the name of the song was Sending You Roses.
Isn't that beautiful? You know, you'd be surprised how common that sort of thing is, because our loved ones are energy beings. It's easy for them to mess with electronics or any kind of machinery, provided that they're at a high enough level and they have some skill. So your husband clearly has some skill. That's a great story. They also can blink the lights and do things like that, flick the TV channels.
Well, I'll tell you another one where he communicated with me. He had come to me about a month before my brother passed, and he told me, and my brother was the only one that was coming up here. I live on a farm and was helping me around here. And he had came and told me my brother was going to come home with him soon. And I said, no, you can't do that. I'm not going to allow it. And I got all upset, and I wrote down the date and the message. And a month later, I was riding my motorcycle, and he told me I needed to go visit my brother. And I said, okay. Well, they were having a yard sale, a 100-mile-long yard sale, and he lived by the lake, and this yard sale was all the way around the lake road. And I was riding over there, and I was going, what am I doing riding around all these people pulling in and out on my motorcycle? I'm going to get hit. And he again said, nope, keep going. You got to go. So I went over to his house, and he wasn't home, and I pulled back out, and I was coming out, going down the main road, and he passed me. And I went, oh, if I turn around, someone's going to hit me. And my husband again said, no, you have to go back. And I said, well, what about these people? They're going to hit me. I'm on my motorcycle. And he said, go down to the party store, turn around in the parking lot, and come back and go back. Well, my brother did new house cleanups, and he always had a crew with him. And for years, I've never seen him alone. His girlfriend was either there, or 4 or 5 of the crew guys were there. And so I turned around, and I went back, and here he was by himself getting out of his truck. And I said, I knew I was going to see you. And he said, you did? And I said, yeah, I just had this feeling that even though I came here and you weren't home, I was going to run into you. And I saw you, and I had to turn around and come back. And so he said, well, have you had lunch? I said, no. So he made me lunch, and we sat there and talked. And I'm writing a book about my communication with my husband. And we were talking about the book, and he kept telling me, finish the book. And then he said, let's make a pact. If I die, I'll communicate with you, and if you die, you communicate with me. And I said, okay, and I gave him a kiss, got on my motorcycle, went home, and the next morning at 10 o'clock, I got a phone call. He had a heart attack and died.
Oh, my. Wow.
And I thought, oh, my God. Well, we had just talked hours earlier that we were going to communicate. So I went and got his son, and he wanted to go to the hospital, which was an hour ride away. By the time we got there, everybody had been gone. We made them bring his body from the morgue so we could see him. And then my nephew was so upset, he wouldn't eat. I took him out to eat. I finally got him to eat something. We went to all these funeral homes, and I spent the whole day with him. And I didn't get home till about midnight that night, and I put my truck away, and it was a full moon glistening over my pond, and he was going to come over and see the pond because I had just gotten it all dug out and cleaned up, and I thought in my head, you never got to come and see the pond. And I heard his voice. He said, I can see it from here. And I thought, oh, my God, you are communicating with me just like Doc. And then as I was walking to the house, I heard him say, thanks for taking care of the boy for me.
Oh. Wow.
And then he started coming with my husband every once in a while. I was out on the mower, and I heard my husband say, look up, look up. And I looked up, and 2 eagles were circling my house. And I went, wow, that's cool. And he goes, it's us. And I go, us who? He said, me and your brother. So then he came a few times with my brother, and one time, and I knew nothing about layers until I interviewed PMH. And one time I said to him, how come my brother doesn't come with you all the time? And he said, because he's on a different level.
Yeah, well, that's what happens. That's why what you want to do in this lifetime is ace it. You want to raise your personal vibration as high as you can, because the higher your vibration, the more fun you have, the more places you can go, the more options you have. And if you're as high as, everybody that you possibly could know, there'll be nobody that you will miss because they're, having fun on the higher levels. The higher we go, the more fun it is and the more beautiful it is. It's just sad that people focus on negativity here rather than focusing on using this as the great opportunity it is to grow spiritually.
Well, I can't say that the communication that I have received was negative, because there were times my life was saved. I was riding my motorcycle one time. I heard my husband say, I was going about 70, 75 miles an hour, and he said, back out of it. And I said, what? He goes, slow down, and now. And so I slowed down, and the car in front of me had a car stopped in front of her, and he turned into a driveway right in front of an oncoming car, and that guy swerved, hit the lady in front of me head on, and his bumper flew over her car and just missed my head.
Oh, wow.
And if I would have been going faster, I would have been involved in that accident.
Yeah, it's very common for our loved ones to help us that way, to save us. We also, people should know, we all have at least one spirit guide who's somebody who was, a human being who was in a body. They're more developed than we are, and they're helping us live our life plan. But in addition, we all have at least one guardian angel. These angels are a different class. They are part of God, but they never inhabit human bodies. But our guardian angel's sole responsibility is to keep us alive, which they say is a real task here, because there's so many things from germs to accidents that could kill us. So their job is to keep us from dying until we get to an exit point, at which point they're trying to help us get the deed done so they can leave, and we can leave.
It's interesting that you said that, because I know that my guardian angel saved my life when my first husband, he ran off with my brother's wife and kidnapped all 4 of our children. And they drugged me on the side of a car 60 miles an hour. And I was afraid, and I had my arm through the steering wheel. Like a dummy, I thought I was going to pull the keys out and stop them. Not thinking that the keys don't come out unless it's in park. And he took off with me on the side of the car. Well, as he started going faster, and he was trying to have the trees hit me and knock me off the side of the car, I was afraid I was going to die, so I was going to let go. And something said to me, don't let go. Look at the speedometer. And I looked at the speedometer, and that's when I saw we were going almost 60 miles an hour. So I know if I would have let go, I probably would have got ran over, or, but I survived that because that voice told me not to let go.
Oh, that's terrible.
I have had some experiences, let me tell you. You know what? My friends call me the Timex woman. She took a licking and kept on ticking.
My goodness.
But yes,
wow.
And see, that had to have been an angel or a spirit guide. But yes. I knew it was something divine that was trying to save me.
It was probably your guardian angel. Sometimes they'll be seen at scenes of accidents doing impossible things like lifting a car. They look like they'll be a regular person who lifts the car and makes it look like easy in order to save someone, and then when you turn around, they've disappeared. That can be an angel in disguise. Angels typically don't show with wings and fancy dresses. That's they look like people, but they're just a different class of people.
Yeah, I have read that angels have come and guided people through their tragedies. I've seen that on Beyond. Have you ever seen Beyond on TV?
No, I don't watch TV really ever.
There was this program that used to be on, I think it was the History Channel, and it's called Beyond. And there was a story in there about a man that he was a mechanic and he was working on the semi-motor, and the jack fell and the motor fell on him and crushed his chest. and there was the guy, the truck driver was there, and he had called for an ambulance, but he saw 3 beings, and he said that they lifted it enough where he could breathe until they could get there and rescue him.
Yes, and then you look around and they're not there. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So
if it's not a planned exit point, they do everything they can to keep you from dying. That's how it happens.
So someone who suffers a violent death, say, ISIS, for instance, they march the men out and say they're going to chop their head off. Do those people, when they're experiencing that, do they feel that tremendous pain that they're going through during that death?
No, that's an interesting question. What we are given to understand by people who have been through, accidents that were part of a planned death is the most typical report. They say that they were out of the body before the accident. For example, someone who is a very high-level being and has reported extensively on his experiences after he returned, said that he shot right through the roof of the car, and then, as a being, and he's floating in the air, and he sees the accident happen below him, at which point his body also shoots out through the sunroof. He saw his body shoot out, but he was not in the body. He didn't have any pain at all. And typically, people, if death is going to be the result, typically we are out of the body, we don't feel the pain. If death is not going to be the result, that's not the case.
Die in the ambulance on the way to the hospital, and then they bring them back, and then they take them to the hospital, and they prolong their death. What about those people?
If death is going to be the result, you just don't feel the pain. Because there's no point to it. You're going to leave. Every effort is made to take care of us. It's just hard for people to really comprehend how much we're loved and how carefully we're nurtured and cared for. Now, sometimes it's necessary to feel pain. Typically with cancer, for example, cancer can be a wonderful spiritual lesson that someone has planned. And so they go through the pain as part of the spiritual experience that is going to help them grow. The need to forgive the pain, the need to learn patience, the need to learn tolerance, all the things that they felt they needed to learn, they can learn by having cancer. One of the questions you could ask is, well, what about a mass disaster like a group of people killed by ISIS or the planes on 9/11? One of the things that is strongly suggested, and I don't know the answer definitively, is that all of those mass disasters, everybody in the disaster is someone who had that's his exit point, and he just had chosen to take it, often as a gift to others. If the plane's going to go down and you're not supposed to go, then you're going to find it. You're going to be in a minor accident on the way to the airport, or something else will keep you from actually getting on that plane. That's what they tell us.
Well, it's interesting that you said that, because I was just thinking about that plane, that Malaysia plane that went down in the Indian Ocean.
Yeah.
And I had read a story that there was a woman and her child that was supposed to get on that plane, but she got caught in traffic and just missed it. And she was very angry because it was still out there, but they had already shut the door and they wouldn't let her on, and she was so angry that they wouldn't let her on.
Yeah. Well, it was obviously not their time to go. Yes.
Yeah, well, I bet you she wasn't angry after she
very
found out
quickly
it went down.
She forgave them very quickly. Yes, I think that's probably true.
But that must have been because that was not her time to go.
Right, and the child as well.
Very interesting. Look, but I want to ask you about Jesus, because a lot of people that, again, we're going to get back to the steadfast Christians that just figure every word you have to obey. Just put it that way, obey.
But they don't, though. That's what gets me. They're not obeying Jesus at all.
Well, yeah, because it's not projecting love when you have to act like you hate someone because they won't conform to your way of thinking. But a lot of them will discard a near-death experience if they don't hear that the person talks or saw Jesus or talks about Jesus. What do you think about that? Because I myself, I believe in Jesus. I believe that there's only one and that we all have the same one. But I was told the one that I believe in isn't the one that they believe in because I'm being tricked.
Look, here's what we are told by the dead, who know a whole lot more than these people who call themselves Christians but actually are not followers of Jesus. The dead tell us that Jesus was not the Son of God. Jesus actually was God on earth. Jesus was so elevated that God could look through his eyes and try to understand how it is that giving us free will could possibly have screwed up so badly. And in the person of Jesus, God then told us how to fix it, and that's the teachings in the Gospels. Jesus even says this. He says, it's not me, but it's God in me speaking to you. He says this right in the Gospels. They don't listen to him. But Jesus is much, much more important than any Christian has ever said he was. The Christians do not follow Jesus. The Christians treat Jesus as if he came just to be a sacrifice, and that's it. He didn't. He came as our teacher. God doesn't need a sacrifice. God loves us perfectly. But God did very badly then need to try to give us a revelation about how we should be living. But because the Christians have ignored it for 2,000 years, God is giving it to us a second time. He's telling us now, open your Bible, read the Gospels, and follow the teachings. If you love Jesus, the least you can do is follow his teachings, for heaven's sake.
Why do you think Jesus took so much persecution for trying to for associating with sinners like prostitutions and things like that? Why do you think he took so much flack about that?
Well, because, look, here's the problem. He was living at a time when to say anything against the prevailing religion brought a death sentence. And he had to stay alive long enough. For 3.5 years he managed to do that while he still taught the truth. But to actually say out loud some of this stuff would have made him buy the farm a lot sooner. But what he was trying to do was to teach us about where we're going. He tried to teach us the nature of God. He tried to teach us the nature of the afterlife and our nature. What are we really? One of the things he made a point of letting us know is that status on earth is not status, in the afterlife. When he said the first shall be last, he said whoever is the least of you, though that person is the greatest. He's talking about what's going to happen when we get to the afterlife. But he couldn't come right out and say what he was talking about because that was against the religion. Several of the things that were important for him to say, he had to say over days because the temple guards would change. They were always looking for him to say something that he shouldn't. The temple guards would change, but his listeners and followers would be constant, so he would expect them to put together what he was telling them over days. There are a number of instances like that where for example, he plainly says in the Gospels that that God does not judge us. He says, God does not judge you, but has entrusted all judgment to the Son, that all may honor the Son just as they honor the Father. Okay, well, I guess they let him get away with saying that. Different day, but actually in the same gospel. I can't remember which one it is. I think it's Luke. I'm not sure. It doesn't matter. The same gospel, he says on a different day. And as for me, I don't judge anyone. I didn't come to judge the world, but to save the world. Oh, okay, so we've just learned that God doesn't judge us and Jesus doesn't judge us, and it's right in the gospel. A little while later, different group, different guards, different day, he says, judge not that unless you be judged, because with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. That's exactly what happens when we die. When we go through our life review, if we haven't learned to be very forgiving while we were here, we're going to judge ourselves very harshly, because during our life review, we get to feel not only how we felt at every point during our entire life, we get to feel how we made everybody else feel. And people say they were prepared for the big things they'd done wrong. They knew that, they microwaved the cat or whatever they did. But they were not prepared for the little things, the little times they'd hurt feelings or done something that was really devastating to somebody else. It's hard to forgive yourself for that stuff when you're back home and you know what's really going on. So everything he says is true. It's just that the people listening, people today who should be reading but are not reading the Gospels, ignore what he says. And that's wrong. How can you call yourself a Christian and not follow the Lord? I don't get that.
Well, the lady I had on last week, she said that she came back, but she did do a life review. She said she felt like she was in front of a council. They were in a round circle, and in the center was this beam of light, and she knew that was God or the presence of God because she felt such love coming from the light. And she said that they said she had fulfilled her contract and it was her time to go on, but she takes in animals, and she is a very kind soul. She has 5 dogs and 3 cats, and she was concerned about what was going to happen to her animals. So she was like on trial, she said, and someone that she knew that had passed earlier was like her attorney, and she had to plead her case to come back. And they couldn't understand why she wanted to come back because she had fulfilled her contract, and they told her, you don't want to go back. It's going to be dark. You're going to have rough times and blah, blah, blah. But they did allow her to come back. She died 2 years ago, and she said that the biggest thing that she brought back with her was to let everyone know that we need to love one another, that we are all one, and when we hurt each other, we're just hurting ourselves.
Right, but that's an interesting one because she's obviously a more elevated being, and this was an out-of-body experience, so it wasn't an exit point. If it had been, she would already have had her cord severed. But she was out of her body, and this council, the presence of a council, they're not judges, they're advisors. That they're reported in the life reviews of completed deaths of people who are at a somewhat higher level. They're giving us advice and counsel on the more subtle aspects of our lives, and so she obviously done really well. And so they said, this isn't your exit point, but you could just stay because there's nothing more you need to do. You've done everything you needed to do, and that's rare what happened to her, but it's quite lovely, I think.
Yeah.
The fact that she wanted to come back, even though nobody in their right mind would want to come back if they had a choice, I think that's just lovely.
Well, I've had a lot of people, and I also had in my past, I had a narcissistic boyfriend that whenever I would talk about what happens when you die or the afterlife, he would tell me I was woo-woo, cuckoo, and that nobody goes anywhere. You just fall in a hole and rot, and that's the end of you. What happens to someone like that?
Well, that's actually an interesting question, because one of the problems we have with religions is that if you are too certain about what is going to happen when you die, you actually, because your mind is so powerful, you create the illusion of what you believed in, which is why there are Bob Monroe, who was a great out-of-body traveler, called them hollow heavens. He visited some of them. They're places that look like what you expect, except they're not real, and you've got to be rescued from them. And people who believe there's nothing after death will sometimes put themselves into a hollow heaven environment that feels like what they expected. So, in other words, blackness. He gets to experience blackness until he gets real bored with it, and then he'll perhaps call out to someone, and someone will come and help him out of it.
Well, it's funny because
it doesn't have to happen. I mean, he can be fine if he just opens his mind a little bit.
Well, I was so worried one night about him not being able to evolve that I asked him if he would do me a favor, that if he found himself in a terrible place or felt like he was trapped, just ask Jesus to come and help him to get out of there and forgive himself for whatever he's done. And he just looked at me like, oh, yeah, right. And I said, just remember that I had said that to you, okay? And he goes, fine, I'll remember. Well,
but the point is, you can't help people who don't want to be helped. All you can do is offer. And you can't let yourself worry about people who have made decisions that are going to be harmful to them. All you can do is be an example of the love and kindness and joy that comes with spiritual growth. I mean, people want the kind of feeling that those who are growing spiritually have. This joy and freedom from fear and just happiness at every moment. And, I mean, love is like a drug. I mean, if you get to just live that drug every minute, can you imagine the joy of that?
Well, I couldn't take any more negative energy from that and narcissism, so I left that relationship. But I still love that person, and I still care for him. So he'll probably be another one I'll have to try to spiritually rescue.
You're going to be busy, you know, when you get there, but that's all right. Everybody needs hobbies, and you can be rescuing all your friends.
Well, it's funny because I always, you know, I mean, where I am here, I have a huge connection with the birds and a lot of the animals on the farm. I mean, these things can actually understand me. I've had snakes understand me. That sounds weird, but I was putting water in the bird bath, and my dog was jumping around back and forth and biting at the bottom of the bird bath, and I looked at her and said, "What are you doing?" And there was a bunch of little crabgrass there, and there was a mama snake, and she kept putting her head up and putting it down, and then there was a baby snake, and it kept putting its head up and putting it down, and then I realized my dog was trying to, spook them snakes, so I told her, "Get out of here." And then the mama put her head up, and I said, "It's okay, I made her go away, you can come out now," and they came out and left.
Isn't that funny?
And the same with the birds, they get trapped in my deck, and they fly back and forth and hit the window, and I had a mourning dove that it wouldn't stop flying and hitting the window, and its poor little leg was bleeding, and it fell on the floor. And normally, if you go over and try to pick a bird up, it'll try to fly away. And I just talked to it. I told it, "Don't fly away." I wasn't going to hurt it, and it was just looking at me with its eye. And I walked over, and it picked it right up. My girlfriend was here, and she goes, "You are Ellie Mae." And I took it outside and put it on the pole, and it turned around and looked at me like, "Thank you," and it flew away. Well, this year I had a hummingbird get trapped in the deck, and this is the weirdest one. I took a stick because it was way up by the rafters, and I put the stick up there, and I told him not to be afraid, just get on the stick, and I would take it out, and it got on the stick, and I walked over to the door and put the stick out, and it flew away.
Oh, my goodness.
It's like they can, and it's weird because I have two bird baths, and I go out and I clean them every day and put fresh water in them, and I have a lot of pine trees around my house, and while I'm cleaning the bird baths, it's like the bird sanctuary here. They all just start chirping, and I was on the phone with my girlfriend, and she said, "What the heck is all that noise?" I said, "Oh, it's the birds. They're excited because I'm giving them fresh water." I said, "The word's out, man." So then my well broke last summer for about 4 days, and the birds kept coming to my window and looking in, and I know what they were saying. They were looking in like, "Are you in there, lady? Where's the water?" And when the guy came to fix my well, he said, "I got to go get a part." He goes, "Could you wait a few days?" And I said, "Well, I'm kind of like a take a shower every day girl." I said, "But I'm sure I can manage, but I don't think they can." And he looked, I pointed out to the bird bath, and they were standing in the bird bath pecking at it. It was dry. And I pointed to the bird bath, and he looked out there, and he said, "Who?" And I said, "Those birds. Can't you see them looking at us like, 'Lady, where's the water?'" And he looked, and he said, "Oh, my God, they are looking at you. Like, where is it? Where is it?" So he stayed. He fixed the well. And then when he got the water going, he went right out there and filled it up. And he told that guy while he was filling, he goes, "You think these birds really talk to her?"
Yeah, it's in that. I mean, I think that's lovely. Animals are able to communicate with us by telepathy to some extent. I don't. This is an area I've not studied. There are others though who have, and it's all quite wonderful. There's so many things that are wonderful that people are just not aware of.
Well, after I had saved 2 mourning doves in my deck, and after I had saved them, every year I have these 2 mourning doves that follow me all around the farm. If I go to the back of the farm, they stand on the barn. If I'm cutting the grass and I go back and forth, they stand on the top of the barn and they turn around whichever way I'm facing. Or if I walk around the property, they fly from tree to tree and follow me.
Huh, that's cute.
Yeah, and I always say, oh, there's my guardian angel birds. And another thing that happens a lot is I have white feathers that are put in front of the barn door, or they're at my back door on the step, or they're at the gate. I mean, I find them everywhere. It's white feathers. And when I started finding them, I thought, this has got to mean something. And then I read in a book, when feathers appear, angels are near.
Yeah, well, one of the common kinds of signs that the dead will give us is feathers. Someone just sent me a picture today of a spectacular pile of feathers that she found on her doorstep one morning not long after a loved one had died. That's exactly the kind of thing that they would do, or even just 1 or 2 feathers. If you're finding feathers as a regular pattern right after a death, but you normally don't find them, they're probably signs from a dead loved one.
So they can physically show us things or leave us things.
Oh, yes. They tend to be apports, which are objects that are dematerialized and then rematerialized. In other words, you wouldn't see it flying through the air. You would see it appear in air and drop. And people have seen them arrive, and that's what they look like. Suddenly there's this thing in the air, and it drops small objects. They won't bring you a Ferrari, but they'll bring you, pebbles, feathers, coins, that sort of thing.
What about mirrors, Roberta? Because I had an experience where I saw my husband's face in a mirror, and it was when my ex-narcissistic boyfriend had taken me on a trip, and he was very cruel. In fact, he was so cruel to me that I went and got my own room and almost flew home myself, but he said, I'm not going to let you. And we were in his semi, and on the way back, I spent most of the time in the bunk. But when we had stopped to fuel up, I got up in the front seat for a minute to get out of the bunk, and I saw my husband's face in the mirror. And it kind of freaked me out, so I went back in the bunk and started reading the book again. And I don't know who locked the doors, but somebody locked the doors. And when my boyfriend got in, he started yelling at me if I ever locked him out of his truck again, and he knocked my lights out and all this. And I said, I never touched your locks. Well, he actually called me about a week or 2 later and said, I think I owe you an apology. I believe you didn't lock my doors because it happened to me again. And I knew immediately it was my husband. And when he said it, I heard my husband say, I know you care for him, but I still don't like him.
Oh, well, to each his own, as they say. No accounting for taste.
But, he actually admitted, he said, my door's locked on me when I was out of the truck again, and you weren't in it to blame, And he said it's a good thing I keep a key underneath the hood or I would have been locked out. So obviously he believed that I didn't lock his doors. And, and he knows that I have communication with my husband because he asked me one time, do you think it was your old man? And I said, I don't know. Do you?
Well, part of what you're doing really is giving people examples of what can happen if you're open to it. I mean, I know of cases where people still have very intense relationship with a spouse or a child, someone who was close to them, and this can go on for decades, and it can include all kinds of things, including, for example, apports, including songs on the radio or songs delivered in some other way, just thoughts, all kinds of things. Bumper stickers. I mean, I know someone who gives all of these signs still to his family, and he died, more than a decade ago.
Well, the song that I played tonight at the beginning of the show, when I went in to spend my private time with my husband at the funeral home before everyone showed up, I played that song. I asked them to put that song on while I was visiting with him. And the first month after he died, every store I went into, that song come on.
Yeah, that's another very typical thing that they will do. They seem to be able fairly easily to manipulate music, pre-recorded music that plays in elevators or stores or whatever, and they can time it so that when you're entering, and they can time your arrival to the store, they can make it happen so that every time you walk into a store, some song will play. If it happens once, it doesn't mean anything. But if it's a song that's significant to you and it keeps happening, that's your loved one. Always thank your loved one. Say, I love you, that's wonderful, please do it again, say it aloud. And, you start getting, there are people who make songs their specialty, and they do it for years and years. And it's fun for them, and it's fun for you.
Well, I knew something was going on, and the thing is, the week before he died, we had made a pact that he told me that he would stay around me and protect me and communicate with me. And I thought, is this kind of weird that this song's coming on? So then a couple days later, I'm sitting at the light, and a car pulls up next to me, and they're playing their radio, and that song was on again. And I was like, wow. And I was going to have my grandchildren come that weekend, and I was going to go get some money out of the bank, and my bank was at the south end of town. And I was on my way to the north end. I was halfway to the north end, and I remembered that I didn't get the money. And I went, oh, man, I got to turn around and go all the way back. And he spoke to me, and he said, no, you don't. He said, there's a bank across the street from Myers where you're going. And I thought for a minute. I said, there is a bank, but I don't know what kind of bank it is. And he goes, no, it's your bank. And I went, this is insane. I'm going to get all the way there, and it's not going to be my bank, and then I'm going to have to go twice as far back to the bank. And he said, are you doubting me? And I said, okay, I'm going to call you on it. And I went to the bank, and it was my bank. And I went, oh, my God, you are communicating with me. And he said, I never leave your side.
Well, that's something which people wonder about that. So we should talk about that. Do our loved ones stick with us for the rest of our lives? Do they come and go? What do they do? A few things are true. One is people seem to be able to be in multiple places at once. So they seem, especially if they're more developed spiritually, they seem to be able to be doing things there and also with us. But also, time is very different there. So it doesn't seem to them, it might seem to you that there's a 20-year gap before you see your loved one who has died, but it may seem to them to be no time at all. Time is very flexible there, and it doesn't objectively exist there. So it isn't a big deal for them to hang around and love you. I mean, we all have that primary spirit guide who is with us from before birth as we're planning our life right through until our death. It's the deal that they make when they sign up with us. And mine happens to be someone who was a big deal in one of his lifetimes. In his next to last lifetime, he was Thomas Jefferson. And I didn't learn this until just over a year ago, and I was appalled to think that this poor man has had to be with me my whole life. But I'm doing things that are important to him, and that's why he chose to guide me. But I'm used to it now, and I realize that to him this is helping him as well as helping me, that we're doing what we're doing. But your perspective becomes so different when you come to understand that they don't have time. So it isn't as if they're really committing a huge amount of time to us, since there isn't any time. And it makes things, I think, a lot more sort of bearable for us. Your husband can do a lot of other things too. He's not having to devote so much of his afterlife fun to.
Well, I find it interesting that you said that whatever it is that we want, we can create it on the other side. And it's so weird that you said that, because he always wanted to own his own tavern here. And he told me right before he died, he said, if there isn't beer in heaven, I'm not going. And I said, honey, I'm sure whatever it is you need in heaven, they'll have it for you. Well, he had told me one time that he doesn't have a mansion, that he runs a pub. And I said, oh, so they got beer in heaven? And he said, no, it's not beer. He said it's nectar, but it's kind of the same. And he said in this pub they have flat screen TVs, and that they watch us down here, what's going on.
You know, it's interesting you say that because that's actually true. One of the things that they have is it looks like a picture, like a painting, but it's actually alive, and if they look into it, they can watch us as if we're on TV. Families will get together to watch beloved family members who are still here. To have a viewing party as you'd have a TV party. That's actually true. Isn't that sort of creepy to think they're doing that? But they are. And
I'll
give
you a little example. When he told me this, at the time, I was being harassed by people around here, and they were making attempts on my life, and what they were trying to do.
Wait a minute. Why do they do that? That's insane. Why are people hating you? What is it you're doing?
Well, this is what a target goes through, and it has to do with estate stealing. And what they wanted, and they had me going, let me tell you. They made several attempts. They turned the gas on and almost blew me up. They put a bottle of sleeping pills on a bag of popcorn, hoping that I'd eat it. I ate a little bit, but I only ate 1 or 2 kernels, and it tasted funny, and I threw it back. And they put a shotgun shell in the middle of my gun, in the barrel of my gun. If I would have fired it, it would have blew up in my face. They were scaring me, and I bit. I mean, I went out and bought a fifth wheel, and I was going to have my friend help me sell this house. I packed everything in the house in a box and was going to put it in a storage unit. And I was on my way of getting out of here because I thought someone was out to kill me. And he came in my dream the night before I was going to leave and wanted to know why I was running away and leaving the biggest egg in my basket out of my sight. And I thought about it the next day, and then something was shown to me that the people that were doing this were the ones that were saying they were going to help me. And I figured it all out. They were telling me that, they were going to sell the house. Well, they had a house sitter for me, and the house sitter slipped up and told my friend that as soon as I left, he was going to put all the utilities in his name. And I thought, well, wait a minute. He's not moving into my house. And, why would he take and do that? And then it dawned on me that they were going to make it look like I sold the house to him. So I did not leave. And when I fell asleep, I decided, since I had everything packed up, that I'd show them that I was going to paint this whole house and put everything back up and just stick it in their face that I was staying. And I went and bought all the paint, and I was painting the living room, and I was really tired, and I fell asleep, and my husband came in my dream. And this is when he started telling me about the pub and the flat screens and everything, and he said, we've all been sitting here viewing you, and we were making bets on whether you'd cave and run. And I kept saying, no, you were strong, you would stay and fight. And he said, and we're celebrating because you're putting the pictures back up and fighting.
That is a very strange story. Why did they have it in for you? What did you do to these people?
Well, I don't know how you get put on the list to be a target, but I know over 3,000 targets now, and a lot of them are widows, and it has to do with trying to steal the estate. They even took my deed to my property out of my safety deposit box.
I find that incredible. I've never heard of that. That's terrible.
Yeah, and and the thing is, a lot of targets, a lot of them are, like I know one in Texas that she inherited a family estate, and her sister wanted more than what she got, and so she is being targeted by her sister and their group. And a lot of it has to do with trying to swindle estates from women. But yeah, and it's weird too, because it was like the light bulb came on that night when he told me not to run. And it's a good thing he did, because I would have been duped really bad.
Yeah, that's just, I find it hard to believe people would do that to themselves, because what they're doing to their spiritual vibration is really horrendous. That's the kind of thing. I'll tell you another thing they were doing. I was so traumatized, because my husband had just died like 3 weeks earlier. And I was so traumatized that I was running to their house to tell them, oh, my God, they were in my house again and this and that. And I kept buying new locks, and I realized, and I caught her, she would say, maybe someone's got a microphone in your purse and they know when you're coming and going.
put your purse in the bathroom so they can't hear us talk. And so I would. I put my purse in the bathroom, and lo and behold, her husband would come in and go in the bathroom, and he was copying my keys. And I figured that out, that they were the ones that were coming in my house, because I had sent her to get new locks, and she came over and changed them with my girlfriend that was staying here that day, and I was exhausted and sleeping. And after she left, my girlfriend said to me, "Did you tell her that she could have a key?" I said, "No, why?" She said, "She took a key for every one of your locks."
Did you call the police on these people?
Well, the police are involved. When you become a target, the police are part of the program, and they are paid to label you mentally ill so no one will listen to you.
This is incredible. I just don't believe your story. It's so unbelievable.
Well, I can send you some information about how targeting works, but yes, that's how it works.
So you're saying it's widows that they do?
Well, it's not just widows. There are different reasons why you get put on a list. If you cross somebody that's in this program, they can put you on the list. If you cross law enforcement, they can put you on the list. And see, at first I had no idea how this works, so I ran around everywhere. I ran to the police. Then I I figured out the police real fast because they come in your yard at night and they would bang on the windows and bust stuff, and I didn't know what was going on. So of course I'm going to call the police. Well, that's what they want you to do. And when the police came over here one night, they said to me, "Well, why don't you pack a bag and come with us so we can take you someplace safe?" And I started laughing because I don't buy into fear. I'm the only girl of 7 boys, and I just don't buy into fear. And I said, "I'm not leaving my home so that whoever's coming in and wrecking my things and harming my animals can be in there doing whatever they want while I'm somewhere hiding." And I said, "And besides, I have animals." And he said, "We'll place your animals." I said, "You aren't placing my animals anywhere." And he kept looking at the other cop like, "She's not buying this. What do I do now?" And the other cop just kept nodding his head to him like, "Continue." So the guy that was doing this to me was being trained. And he didn't know how to handle me because I wasn't biting. And then he said to me, "Oh, what if they hurt you?" And I started laughing. And I said, "Well, let me tell you something. If anybody thinks they're going to come in that house and hurt me, somebody's going to go out the door with a tag on their toe, and I can guarantee it ain't going to be me."
Wow.
And he just looked at the cop like, "What do I do now?" And I said, "You know what, I'm tired of playing games with you guys. Why don't you just leave and I'll protect my own property?" Well, 6 months later, I met another widow that lives in the county below me, and she wanted to come over and explain to me what happened to her. Her husband had died. She inherited $600,000. She went through the same thing, the same kind of harassment, people busting, coming in her house, and she thought someone was trying to kill her. Her kids said, "Well, someone's just harassing you in the neighborhood. Sell your house, get out of there, blah, blah." She moved into a condo. It kept up in the condo. She was being microwaved through the wall, and she called the police. And it was so weird when she came here and told me her story because she told it word for word. She said, "They said to me, 'Well, why don't you come with us so we can take you someplace safe?' And she bit. She said, 'Okay.' They said, 'Go pack a bag.' So she ran and packed a bag, jumped in the back of the cop car. They stuck the clipboard just through the window enough for her to sign. They said, 'Well, you have to sign this to us for us to allow you to ride in the police car.' So she signed it thinking she had to do that. And what they did is they signed her into the mental ward. She committed herself.
Good heavens. Well,
and then when she got in there, she was tortured, she was implanted, and her harassment got worse. And while she was in there, the county prosecutor and his son, because they had her drugged like you wouldn't believe, and they came and told her that they were going to represent her and help her and everything, and they had her sign all this paperwork while she was drugged, and they swindled her out of the $600,000.
Good heavens. I think I can't believe that's really actually going on.
But, my jaw just dropped
do it
when she told me that what they said to her, because it was exactly what they said to me, word for word.
Yeah, I
We have gone to Washington, D.C., the Oversight Committee, and then that's why I started doing radio shows about this, because I wanted answers, and so I followed the money trail. And what it is it is part of Project Paperclip and MK Ultra, and it's unconsensual experimentation on humans. I mean, this is going on around the world, because I have listeners in the UK, I have listeners in Belgium, I have listeners that write me from around the world, and the exact same things happening to them, word for word. And actually, perpetrators have given up some of their information, saying, well, I know they go to a camp in Texas to be trained for 2 weeks. And isn't it interesting that everyone that goes through this is labeled mentally ill, don't believe them, and how could I be mental and 3,000 other people be mental with the same exact story?
Yeah, that's terrible. I'm very sad to hear that.
Well, I went down the rabbit hole because they use microwave weapons on you that can be shot from a football field away. It goes through your walls, and it creates illness, cancer. It cripples you. In fact, my dog has cancer right now from it. And the thing is, I wanted to know the answers. Well, I found a study where a professor studied this, and I went down the money trail. And the thing is, these weapons are being made by Lockheed Martin and all the companies that make weapons for the military. The Navy is behind this program, and the Navy's been caught many times experimenting on United States citizens. And I couldn't understand why the Oversight Committee or Congress wouldn't help us, but I found the answer. It's because they're invested in all these weapons.
That is so amazing. I'm so sorry.
I mean, that's it in a nutshell, But, yeah,
wow.
A lot of people don't know this is going on, but if you ever hear someone say I'm a TI or a targeted individual, that's what happens to targets. And, if you keep calling the cops, eventually a lot of them get committed, and you get thrown in once they commit you, then they got the label on you,
Wow.
And they make a fake file. They go around and show it to your neighbors, and they make your neighbors think that you've done something wrong, and that them watching you and calling whoever they call, because they call somebody and tell them that you're leaving your house so that they know you're gone, and then they come in. I've actually had my neighbor across the street when I was locking my gate. I heard her daughter go, Mom, she's leaving. And her mom went, shh, hold it down. So I came back, and I wrote a note, because they come in your house and they take stupid stuff like toilet paper, toothpaste, and then if you call the cops and say, someone was in my house and stole all my toilet paper, doesn't that sound crazy? Why wouldn't they take something valuable? But the thing is, they shop in your house. They take your food, they take your toilet paper, and, so they don't ever have to, and they don't get in trouble for it. From what one of the perpetrators that called into my show said, law enforcement is instructed to turn a blind eye on it. You'll never get caught. And that's exactly what happens, because they were breaking into my barn, and I chased them down the road. I caught them in the middle of the night, chased them down the road, got their license number, got their house number, gave it to the police, and they started screaming at me that I better leave that guy alone. Well, I knew something wasn't right. So I had a girlfriend that was marrying a cop in another county, and I gave her the information for him to check it out, and he came back to me and he said, that guy's a bad boy. I said, well, I didn't think he was a Girl Scout. And he said, well, he's got a 16-page record, and he's been let out of prison on parole for larceny. And I said, well, why would they be screaming at me to leave him alone when I've never even had a parking ticket. And he's the bad guy. And I knew something. Well, I found out that these people that have these records get a get out of jail free card to target someone. Isn't that something?
Yeah, I find it amazing. I just find it hard to believe. Sorry.
Well, it goes on, believe me. And the first thing they do is they traumatize you so badly because they put so many people on you and they do so many things. Well, look what they were doing to me. I thought someone was trying to kill me, all the attempts on my life, and they use the fear. They get you so scared that you're running, chasing your tail, and you don't know whether you're heads or tails or, So, the thing is, I didn't buy into the fear thing. I bought into the something's not right here, and I'm going to figure it out. So that's what I do. And I help a lot of targets that are new targets because I spent $5,000 on locks until a locksmith admitted to me that the locksmiths are involved. He told me, he took me outside because they put microphones in your house so they can hear you, and they know everything you're doing. And he knew that, and he said, come out to my truck for a minute. And I went out to his truck, and he told me, he said, I can't help you. I don't want to get involved. He said, but don't call any more locksmiths because you're just opening the window and throwing your money out the window. And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, they work with these people, and they get $1,000 right off the bat to give up your key. And I thought, that's why the last locksmith I had come here and retumble all my unpickable locks was bragging to me how he was friends with all the cops. And they were in my house within 2 days.
My goodness. I'm sorry. I really am. This is terrible.
Well, it's been a battle, but, I sent you the link to my window, and when you go over to the window, and I am going to send you a copy of our recording, you can go down into the reviews and read what all the targets say about me, because I've been out here for like 12 years, and I help a lot of the new targets that don't know what's going on, bring them up to speed real fast about don't be afraid, and this is how it works, and don't call the cops, and don't make this mistake. And so maybe that's why might be my purpose. Is that why I'm here? Is that why I went through this trauma? So that I could be the brave one to show others how to survive it?
I don't know. I'm just speechless about all of this.
It is an atrocity. We call it the silent Holocaust because it's kept secret. And I wanted to know how they got away with this. And the way they're getting away with this is under the Patriot Act. They are listing us as possible terrorists, and that they have the right to, it's called the Sneak and Peek Act. We think as Americans that we have our privacy, but if you're put on this list where they want to suspect you, under the Patriot Act, they have the right to come in your house and snoop legally.
Oh, it's too bad. It's too bad. I mean, this is just more evidence of how important it is for all of us to work to raise our own vibration so that we can raise the vibration of all the planet, because this kind of thing couldn't happen if sufficient people in the world were sufficiently loving. It would be impossible for anything like this to happen.
So there's a target that she is in Washington State, and they wanted her house. She has a $350,000 octagon house, and they wanted it. And they radiated her so bad with the microwave weapons, it makes your blood pressure go up, and they caused her to have a stroke. And from listening to you, and you have actually helped us, because I was speaking to her yesterday, and I told her, it's ironic that they're doing all these harmful things to us because they're going to have their life review and see the pain they've caused us, and all they're doing is hurting themselves. And she said, you got that right.
Well, that is true. Our lives on Earth are so brief. We have many of them. The Buddhists call it turning on the wheel because we don't grow very much each time. It takes us many lifetimes to be able to cease incarnating. But we spend most of our time in what we think of as the afterlife levels because our lives are eternal. So to do bad things here to anybody is just like, hitting yourself in the head with a meat cleaver. It's just stupid. It's stupid. It's just unfortunate that they don't know what's going on.
I mean, because I do these shows, and that's another reason why I go by Badbaby, because I picked Badbaby as a nickname when I was a child because I figured if you're going to mess, my brothers always called me a baby. When they would pick on me, they'd call me a baby. And then when I got angry that day when we were playing baseball and I threw my mitt down, they started calling me Badbaby. She's going to get you, Badbaby's going to get you. So I picked that because I figured if you're going to mess with me, you're going to mess with Badbaby. And they put a lot of people on me because I get out here and I speak the truth. I give guidance and information to other targets. And so when I leave the house and I go in the store, I mean, I got several of them following me around the store. I've had them bang into me with shopping carts and just go, it ain't going to get any better, you know. And they want you to get into altercation. I just ignore them. I just put my hand up and say, talk to the hand, and I keep walking away. But, you know, what they want is they want you to get into a fight or an argument with them, and they'll have 2 or 3 that will be witnesses and will be you against all these other people when the cops come. So you know, you have to know these things so you don't fall into their traps. But I was over here ordering a pizza a few months ago, and some woman, I was waiting for it to be made at the little party store, and this woman came in, and she just kept eavesdropping on me and watching me, and I went, here we go, here's a perp after me. And what she did, as soon as I put my pizza in the truck and pulled out of the store, 2 pickup trucks pulled off the side streets right behind me, and they started running up on the back of my truck trying to run me off the road. So I was like, oh, you want to play, do you? So I had gone over there on a dirt road, and there was one big hole on this dirt road, and I almost hit it going over to the store. And I said, we'll play. And when we got on this dirt road, I floored it and got it up to about 70, and I got over to the edge as close as I could, and I said, Lord, don't let me hit that hole. And they hit that hole, and their truck just went airborne. And then they landed, and he slammed on the brakes, and I got away from them. And I looked in the mirror, and I said, that's what you get when you mess with Badbaby.
Oh, my goodness.
But, yeah, that's how my life is. And now, do you understand more why I call myself Badbaby?
Sure. Oh, sure.
But that, you know, that is exactly what the life of a targeted individual is. And it's all, I think that, you know, back in the 70s, they got caught with MK Ultra and said they stopped it. I don't believe they did. I think this is a continuance of it, and they lied about it.
I don't know what that is. But that's all right. I mean, obviously I'm very naive about a lot of things.
Well, I guess I must have opened your eyes tonight.
Yeah, I mean, my life is very narrow. My whole focus is on trying to help people understand what's true about death and the time after death, and the reason why we're supposed to be here. That's really all I ever focus on. That's why I don't watch TV and I don't go to movies. I don't do any of that stuff because
well,
I can't.
What's interesting about what you say about evolving is because when I first was going through this, I was very angry and I had a lot of hatred for all these people. And I don't like them, let's put it that way. I'm not happy that they do this, but I don't have the hate in my heart like I did at the beginning.
Wow. Good for you. Well, then you're growing and they're not. So they are facing a very unfortunate future, I guess.
You know, when they do things, and that's why I asked you about the Satan, because I see a lot of satanic worship from these people. They drive by my house and they throw the sign of Satan at me, and from what I saw Aleister Crowley say on the Tonight Show, he said that's when they throw a curse at you, when they put their hand up like the sign of Satan and like they're throwing something at you. He said that's how you curse people. Well, I used to get all upset about it. Now when I see them coming, I turn my back on them and block and not acknowledge what they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, there is no, we have looked hard for it. There's no Satan, no devil, no powerful entity in opposition to God. And we understand why that must be the case, because in fact the physics of the greater reality that we enter at death wouldn't allow for power in an evil or negative entity. It's not possible.
Well, the other thing I don't understand about these Satan worshipers is that they, I know up here they have done this a lot, is that they do a lot of torture to animals.
Well, that's not going to really feel good when you get to experience how the animals felt, right?
They did it right before Halloween last year. There was a story in the paper, and it was so odd that I walked into I went in to get a burrito at a Mexican restaurant, and the woman asked me if I was staying. I said, no, I can't sit down and enjoy a meal. I have to run home because if I don't, people will be in my house because I'm a target. And the cook stuck his head out and he said, what did you just say? And he said, what about this targeting stuff? And I told him a little bit about it, and he said, do you know you're the fourth person that came in this restaurant and said the identical thing, that they couldn't stay because their house was being broken into? I said, yeah, it's all over the state. And while I was there, the waitress had answered the phone and was upset. Her dog was missing. Well, there was an article in the paper where the sheriff had found 14 dogs in the country, in the field, bob-wired to a tree. Some of them were dead, some of them were still alive, but they were cut up really bad from trying to get out of it. And I said, oh, they're doing their satanic rituals again, but this is the kind of stuff they do. And I've seen them do stuff, and it just boggles my mind that someone would do something like that.
Yeah, it certainly does.
But thank God this woman said that her husband went to find out if it was their dog, and their dog was not in it. So she was happy that her dog wasn't there. But I found it very interesting that the cook told me that I was the fourth person that week that came in and described the same thing happening to them.
Oh, Lord, that's terrible.
So, yeah, this is very widespread. But what I do, and I tell all the other targets to do, is that not to fear them, find out how to keep yourself safe, and try to find your own happiness. Try to find your own joy, because that's what they want to do, is steal your life, steal your joy, and steal your happiness. And I'm not going to let anyone take my happiness. I find it in my own way.
Wow, good for you.
So we are coming, I feel so bad because I told you more about targeting than got you to talk about the book.
Oh, well, sorry.
Well, I would love to have you come back. Maybe I can get a hold of you in a few weeks and we can have you back on again and you can share some more with us.
Well, thank you very much. You certainly have told me a lot of things, that's for sure.
Well, you know, I think that I'm a evolved spirit and I want to keep evolving, and I worry about a lot of the targets because they don't see past the hate and the cruelty in this world, and they get angry. Let me tell you, when we were talking on last week's show about how we go over a life plan before we come here, you would not believe how many emails I got yelling at me, do you think I signed up from this hell? And I said, well, I hope I didn't, but I said, I don't know. I've never been on the other side. I don't know. And I just answered it with, well, don't kill the messenger, for one. And for two, I guess we'll find out when we die.
And on that note, thank you for having me as a guest, and I hope you all I hope everyone has a lovely evening.
Thank you, dear. And you have a blessed night, and I'll be in contact, and I will send you a copy of the recording, and we'll see if we can have you come back on.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank